Next, I'll show you some examples of EQ and compression techniques that I would apply to vocal recordings with some different voice types. So first, I have a soft male vocal in an acoustic folk country style. For this, I used the Warm Audio WA87, which again is a solid-state condenser mic, and there was no EQ or compression added on input.
If you're smart, you let me know that you'll be letting go. I've cheated and lied, and that's a fact. Will you take me back? Please take me back.
So right off the bat, he's got a good sound here. He's kind of higher pitched, kind of breathy sounding. It's a very natural, organic acoustic sound. So I don't want to over-process this, but I definitely want to brighten him a bit to make him stand above the guitar. And also, I want to round off some of the louder points in his vocal, because right now, some of the high notes are just poking through the mix a bit too much. I want everything to be a bit more level. So I've got the EQ3 7-band loaded up. The first thing I'll do is add a high shelf. This will increase the sibilance, high end, and clarity.
If you're smart, you let me know that you'll be letting go. I've cheated and lied, and that's a fact. Will you take me back? Please take me back. I forsake any luxury if you.
And I don't want to go too far with this. I don't want it to be super bright. Typically, the more dense the music is, the more high end you'll have to add to the vocals to help it stand on top of the mix. With acoustic music like this, I don't need to add too much high end because the music isn't quite as dense as, say, a rock song, for example. With vocals, I always like to add a little bump between around 1K and 2K, and I usually make the bandwidth on this pretty narrow. And what this little bump does is it helps with the diction or clarity of the words. So what I usually do is I'll pull this all the way up and sweep it around, listen for a spot that sounds the best to me, and then pull it back.
If you're smart, you let me know that you'll be letting go. I've cheated and lied, and that's a fact. Will you take me back? Please take me back. I forsake.
So there's just certain areas that resonate more than others, some in a bad way, some in a good way. I found that this area here around 1300 hertz was a pretty good area to bump this up, just to increase the clarity of the diction of his vocals. For the low end, typically what I'll do is I'll bump up a low band somewhere just below his fundamental frequency, and then I'll also roll in a high pass filter to cut out any of the boomy low frequencies.
If you're smart, you let me know that you'll be letting go. I've cheated and lied, and that's a fact. Will you take me back? Please take me back. I forsake.
And what this does is it adds just a little bit of body to his voice. Even though he's singing almost in a falsetto sort of range, it's a very breathy, sort of gentle sound with his voice, but I do want to reinforce some of the bass as well. If you add gain around the fundamental frequency of the singer, what'll happen is that area will tend to resonate more than others. If you boost the frequencies just below their fundamental, this will become a nice, gentle, low-end warmth. Okay, let's give this a listen, and I'll bypass the plugin a few times so you can hear the before and after.
If you're smart, you let me know that you'll be letting go. I've cheated and lied, and that's a fact. Will you take me back? Please take me back. I forsake.
So I've got the BF2A compressor pulled up here. This is included with Pro Tools Ultimate, or you can get it individually on the Avid Store. I'm going with this over something like the Dynamics 3 compressor because it's a model of the Teletronics LA2A, which is a very sought-after optical compressor that's great on vocals. So there's only 4 controls and only 2 of these which I'll use. The gain knob, even though this is on the left side, is not an input gain control. It's actually makeup gain. And then the peak reduction, this controls the amount of compression being applied. It's similar to a threshold control. You can switch between using this as a compressor or a limiter here, and then there's an output gain control. So what I'll do is dial in the peak reduction to tame down the peakmost points in his vocals, and then I'll pull up the gain to get the vocals to a volume level that I like that stands on top of the guitar.
If you're smart, you let me know that you'll be letting go. I've cheated and lied, and that's a fact. Will you take me back? Please take me back. I forsake any luxury if you'll stay here with me. I have no clothes to unpack. Will you take me back? Please take me back.
So you could see in the gain reduction meter that there were points in his vocal performance where the needle was just barely moving down at all, and just on the louder notes it was moving down 3 or 5 dB. So that's the kind of effect I'm going for here. Gentle, smooth compression. If this was a rock or pop tune with a more dense arrangement, I might dial in something a bit more aggressive. But for acoustic music, a setting like this helps round out the peak points, but still preserves much of the dynamics in his voice.